Okay, now that the Q&A is clear and I'll actually be able to see what's current on you guys. Hi, I'm Shelly. Sorry about the technical issues. I am one of the initiates. I am Canada's only initiate. I'm also one of the DP mentors. I finished my DP in 2010. This is one of those things where I tell you, do not worry if your Dedicant path takes you more than a year, because mine totally took me more than a year. I finished the initiate in 2013. I'm primarily Irish Celtic Hearth, but I do know things about the others. So on this note, if you have any questions that you want to ask me but are afraid to put in the Q&A, let's say, shoot me an email, shoot me a Google chat message. I see that I've got you guys on Google chat as well. So yeah, shoot me a Google chat message. If it's something more personal that, or you're afraid to say it due to anxiety, stuff like that, I have no issues pulling questions out of my chat, since we're having technical issues and the whole 9 yards. So yeah, that's that side of things. Because I'd rather you guys be comfortable and ask the question, even if you feel it's one of those questions that should be, you know, well-known, stuff like that. Because some of those questions are sometimes the questions other people are having issues with and don't want to ask, and they need the answer to them as well. So luckily I've been able to condense all the material needed for the DP down into a 12-week span. Because it's every other week, it is going to take us 6 months still, and this is why I'm deciding to continue on even with the technical issue, because that way you guys can still ask your questions and I can get this going, because it's going to take 6 months. This is also not one of those weeks where there's too much that has to be worried about, other than the DP rubric, because it's just the beginning. And it's, you know, my introduction, stuff like that. I will have a question period at the end of each week. You can also ask me questions throughout using the Q&A, because, well, that's the easiest way for you guys to talk to me. Excuse me. So there's a lot of resources available for completing your DP. The ADF site is not the greatest for finding articles. However, the search is a wonderful feature. Please use it. You can find things that you didn't actually expect to be there, even though you can't find them through the regular means of going through the articles. Guilds and the lists that are associated with them, SIGs, stuff like that, you do not have to have completed your DP in order to be a member of them. The lists are actually a really good way of finding out information if you want a specific hearth culture or a specific guild to answer your question. So if you have a bardic question, go to the bardic guild. You can ask questions on the list even without being a member of the guild. As I mentioned earlier, there's the mentorship program, where you can actually receive a one-on-one mentor from ADF, and they can walk you through the DP, give you weekly pokes about, you know, work that you need to be doing, stuff like that. It's a really good program, especially if you want the extra one-on-one assistance. Each mentor does work differently with you, so we get chosen based on, you know, what's needed for hearth culture, what's needed for mental discipline, etc. So I'm just looking for a specific thing. I have that file. So the first thing first, with regards to the DP, the easiest way to look at it is from the rubric. So, is this the file I need? Sorry, I don't have the file up already. I ended up, oh no, that's not the file I need. Okay, so when dealing with the rubric, the easiest way to, well, when dealing with the DP and you're wanting to submit, the easiest thing to do first is look at the rubric. The rubric on the website is not the current rubric. Anyone that's here can email me for the rubric that is being currently used and is approved by our preceptor. That is Carrie Mann. You saw her popping up in the Q&A a little bit, trying to help me get this going. So adequate things for a lot of them are making sure your word count's adequate. And there's certain things for each piece of the rubric for each requirement. So for the understanding of each of the 9 virtues, you need to make sure you've got a subjective as well as an objective approach. So what it means and what it means to you, as well as making sure you've got your word count in all 9 pieces. So the next thing, the next main one is short essays on each of the ADF high days. This is different from your attendance of said high days. This is an essay on the high day versus an essay of the attendance of the high day. Once again, making sure word count's adequate, including all 8 high days, and covering common neo-pagan, not specifically culture-based, but general neo-pagan stuff. We will be going through that in later weeks. The next one is, it says short book reviews on 1 Indo-European studies, 1 preferred ethnic, and 1 modern paganism. Our preceptor, although it says short book reviews, would like a book report. So this is making sure your word count's adequate, that you've used the correct books. You have to convince your reviewer that you've actually read the book and that you cover the entire scope of the book. We do have a short time about that one. Brief description of your home shrine. Once again, adequate word count. Willingness to at least start this way, whether or not you continue. My shrine's actually behind me currently, blocked by my chair and me. With this description, you're going to want to explain the function and purpose of each item, as well as how you incorporate it into your personal practice. The best thing to do is also include future plans for your shrine and what you want to do with it. Whether or not you are able to actually include photos doesn't damper your actual ability to complete this requirement. The 2 powers essay, once again, adequate word count, use of the actual 2 power script that's in your Own Druidry book, PDF files, etc., at least to begin. If you internalize it well enough that you can continue on without the script itself, that's fine, but at least using the script in the beginning is good. And a basic understanding of the purpose of grounding and centering. We do have time within the mental discipline week that we're discussing 2 powers. Excuse me. The next one, as I mentioned, is mental discipline. Use of meditation, trance, or other systematic techniques on a regular basis. Adequate word count. This has a time period of at least 5 months on it. So you have to have a willingness to try over those 5 months. Whether or not you change your method of trying does not matter. It's the fact that you actually try. One of the best ones to actually use for this is a seated meditation. Once again, I'll cover that on meditation week. An account of the Dedicant's efforts to work with nature, honor the earth, and understand the impacts and effects of the Dedicant's lifestyle choices on the environment. This is developing a spiritual connection with nature, demonstrating environmentally sound habits in daily life, and tying your actual spiritual connection with your lifestyle choices. So your choice to use less paper towels because it harms trees, sort of thing. This is the next piece is the ritual attendance. So adequate word count. There's a minimum of the ADF style rituals. You do have to complete at least 4 of the rituals as ADF style. An objective description of the ritual attended, and your own personal reaction to it. So, you know, gatekeeper, etc. included. 1 essay describing the Dedicant's understanding to each of the 3 kindred, adequate word count, categorical descriptions of the kindred, demonstrating your knowledge of said kindreds, and understanding the context of worship. So this is explaining how you work with the 3 kindred and what they actually mean to you. Personal or growth-centered spiritual practice. Now, it says or. So solitaries, you're perfectly fine doing a personal spiritual practice on this question. You do not need to be with a grove. Once again, adequate word count. It's good to show practice with 1 or more earth cultures to show you're actually trying to get out there. Thomas, I just saw this pop up. Yes, it is okay to go over the minimum word count on the essays. There is a maximum that is requested by the preceptor as well as the reviewers, which is 3 times the minimum word count. So if your minimum word count is 100 words, then you want to stay under 300. So that answers that question. So the last part of the growth-centered or personal-centered spiritual practice is observable spiritual growth over the course of the training period. So showing that you've actually grown, showing that you've figured things out a little bit upon your path and seeing how ADF is actually going to work with you. The last piece is the text of the Dedicant Oath Rite and a self-evaluation of your actual performance of said rite. So adequate word count, including your self-evaluation, no matter how hard it is to write about how you did, it does go in there. You include your oath text, but is not within the word count for this requirement. Also, the oath itself has to reflect a dedication to the belief and practices central to ADF. You do not do oaths to the organization itself, just to the beliefs. So that's the rubric. Now, within our Own Druidry book, it talks about the first oath. The first oath can be a mental stepping stone for some. It can also be a very big block for some. Doing the first oath or not does not depend on whether or not you can continue an ADF. Some people have an issue making an oath when they're first stepping onto a path, which is perfectly acceptable. They don't want to oath something wrong, etc., because they don't want the consequences of the oath. When it comes to the first oath, it's all what's best for you and what you feel called to do. Some don't feel called to do it, some do. However, the first oath is one of those things that if you do it or if you decide not to do it, the how and why should go into your journal. Journaling is a big thing for our spirituality because it shows our growth. It shows omens that have come and gone and continued. So you might see a pattern with omens with regards to the offerings you've made. You might see a difference between, say, offering whiskey and offering seeds, depending on who your ritual is to. Make sure you follow your intuition on what actually has to go into your journal. If you think, say, a cat banging at the door at a certain point was a sign from the spirits, make sure you include when the cat started banging at the door. There is a section about what to put in your journal in our Own Druidry book. In the hardcover book itself, well, softcover technically, It's on page XIV in the book. You can find the page numbers on the bottoms of the pages in the PDF as well, so that'll help. I'll make sure I put this information into the link at the bottom of YouTube so that you can find it when it goes onto YouTube. Huffington Post had a really good article about how journaling changes the brain and how it can increase certain things and certain abilities to do different things when it comes to writing and retaining knowledge. So even just writing it down may make you actually remember more of it versus not remembering it because it's just a flit in your imagination. Another thing that is incredibly important is making sure that any resources you use are reputable. The best one to use for any of our stuff is books, although I know some of them can be expensive. The reason being for books is that way when you cite something, the citation's always there. However, for websites, some of the best ways to tell for if your website is reputable is if it shows the author, if it shows the date it was published, if it's a professional website design versus the old GeoCities spinning pentacle sort of thing. The website address as well can tell you a lot, whether it's a .com, whether it's a blog at WordPress, stuff like that. Another main thing for reputability is that it's not open source, so not anyone can edit it like Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a great source to find sources. So if you read a Wikipedia article and like what's in it, go to the site cited sources at the bottom. That'll give you a lot of clues as to where the information came from, yet not actually citing the source itself or the Wikipedia article itself. What else did I want to go over? Are there any questions so far on what I've said? I know I talk fast. It happens. I'll give it a couple minutes to see if there's any questions that come through. Okay, Amanda's asked, how do you tell if something is open source? You'll be able to see if it's open source by how you edit the page. If you can make an account to be able to edit the page, then that's considered open source because just anybody can do it. That way, when you're actually editing the page, you know who else has edited, stuff like that. When a page is open source, it's a lot less reputable because you don't know who else has edited. If you can just make that account and edit willy-nilly, that's pretty much open source. All right, because the August cross quarter is coming up, there is one thing I want to point out. It's one of the articles within the Dedicant path. It's the core order tutorial. It will take you through each step of the core order and make sure that you actually understand each step. So I will put the link in the bottom. I will get to that in a second, Chris. Each of the steps of the core order, when you click on them, they actually have a description of what that section of the core order is supposed to do. And it actually will give you some examples on how to write that. Chris asked, what do I do if a resource isn't covered on the ADF DP reading list? I'm guessing he is asking about the book reports section. With regards to making executive decisions with regards to extra books for the book reports, you can email the ADF preceptors to see about different revisions, different authors, translations, and actually different books. Carrion will have to make sure that they are credible for our work, but that is an option if you've got a book that you know should fit in this section, but it may not have been read by somebody yet. I will make sure anyone who wants that link, I will give them the email address for the ADF preceptor as well. Are there any other questions? All right, so I'm going to go back to the topic of journaling for a second, because in that Huffington Post article, there's 4 tips to make the most out of journaling, which really are good tips for our work. The first one is write consistently. So even if you're thinking something's not good enough, write it down. If you're thinking why you didn't want to do ritual that day, write it down. All of the reasons behind what you do, write them down. Even if it's 10, 15 minutes. I will get to this question now. This would not be the place for those kinds of questions right now, Christopher. That would be best a question for a DP mentor or one of our priests. DP mentors, as I said, you can get them by emailing the ADF preceptor. She will then send you a questionnaire to be filled out. You send the questionnaire in, we get matched to you, and you are then able to discuss the more in-depth questions, such as what is the difference between the Roman version of death rituals in comparison to the Vedic death rituals. So that is the answer to your question, Chris. As I was saying about journaling, the Huffington Post article also says, consider starting out each day journaling. It says that you're more optimistic in the morning if you journal right first thing in the morning. This can work into daily devotionals, morning devotionals, things like this, where you're writing down as soon as you've done this. The third tip is never self-edit. Write freely. Write everything. Write without worrying about spelling or grammar, without punctuation. Whatever the easiest way for you to write is, write it that way. This ties into the last tip for journaling, which is record it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'll actually read this part. It's important to list the happiest moments of your life as well as the lowest moments of your life. So for us, this would include those days that your omen wasn't the greatest, or you didn't feel the greatest before doing ritual, but you did it anyway. It would also include the days that you can't do ritual for reason X, Y, Z. When you've got the reasons why you haven't done ritual or why you did do ritual, you can start to see patterns in your journal. So when you look back on your journals throughout the time that you've done them, you can see the patterns, you can see where you probably should be doing ritual even if you don't feel like it. And once again, I will put that link below me when this posts to YouTube. I will actually pull that up. So our Own Druidry book wants you to make sure for your journal that you include dates and locations, intentions, divinations, notes on the high days and symbolism. When you're doing your Dedicant path, all this information, as you find it, will pool in together to ensure that you've got your essays and your reports the best that they can be. Make sure you put your notes on the books you've read into this journal, your understandings of different things, how they've changed. So Chris asked, what kind of turnaround can we expect on reviews, and can we request certain reviewers? I am going to ask Carrion this question, as I am not actually one of the Dedicant Path reviewers, although I believe Carrion is watching currently. She was talking to me. So Carrion, could I possibly get a message about this so that I can read off the answer? I'm just getting the answer on that now. Give me one moment. All right. So the answer to this particular question, reviews should take about 2 weeks. That can be with regards to making sure your reviewers picked it up in that time or any time up to the 2 weeks for review. You can request reviewers, but it does not necessarily mean you will actually get your requested reviewer. Things like the amount of work that reviewer's already got from the Dedicant path and also other programs will determine on which reviewer you get. So that's the end of that question. Avalon has asked, when we start this, it's still up to us, correct? If we started before and have work completed, we do not need to start over now, I assume. I'm just hoping to find ways to make this easier with my crazy life, and others may be in the same boat. You are completely correct, Avalon. You can start the DP whenever you want. If you have work already done, you can use that if you feel that that is work that you want to include. You do not have to restart now. This is just going to be the 12 weeks of information about what needs to be in the DP, things that you can actually put into the DP, and to make sure you guys have all the information that you actually need to complete this. If you've already got stuff that you've used for nature awareness or meditation, if you're in the middle of your mental discipline requirement, that is completely fine. You can use all that already. I just want to make sure that you guys have the best information that you can to actually complete your DP as well as you possibly can, and actually have this as the best stepping stone possible for any other work that you may want to do if you so choose to do other work. Now, I did figure this week was going to be a little bit more brief since I wasn't getting into the meat of the DP itself. So I just want to make sure there's no other questions for me at this time. All right, Amanda's asked, where can we find a list of all the DP requirements and details about each? In your Own Druidry book, it does have all the requirements. Let me find the section for you. But it is in that book, or the PDF, depending on which version you are working with. It is in Appendix B of the Own Druidry book. So if you scroll down, if you're using PDF, or you go to the back in your Our Own Druidry, it has a section that's called Dedicant Path Documentation. This section has what the actual requirement is, as well as your word counts. If you would like the rubric that I was explaining earlier, I will put my contact information down, as well as most of you have me either on Facebook or Gmail. And you can also contact Karen and Chris. I'll put their emails in an email for you. And you can email either any of us, sorry. But the required documentation is in the book. Now, since I don't know how well the Google event itself worked, next week I will make sure, or next time, sorry, I will make sure I send out an actual email to make sure it goes into your main part of your account for those who are using Gmail and not your social section. That is the plan for me. And I will also make sure why you guys can't join in. So if there aren't any more questions, I'm thinking we will end this for this week, and I will see you guys in 2 weeks. I'll give it a couple minutes for more questions, but other than that, I will close down for the week. All right, so Chris has asked, does the material in the DP journal match the new rubric? I'm just getting clarification on what he means by this, just to make sure. Okay. His clarification is we are given the rubric as similar material in the DP manual. The rubric material itself is not in the DP manual. That is why I've offered to send you guys the PDF. The old rubric is on the website. The new one has not been put up yet. The new one is what the current reviewers are using. The manual does not actually have the rubric in it, to my knowledge. So that's why I'm saying if you would like it, I will include it in the email. All right. I think that is that question done. I love the pluses that I'm getting on the thank you so very much one, guys. So I will close this down for the week. You're welcome so very much. And I will see you guys in 2 weeks.